It seems like game journos are acknowledging the reality of the situation when it comes to PlayStation 5 right now. That the console gen is a failure, that Sony has come out and like specifically said that the PS5 is about halfway through its life cycle, that this thing has no games, and its only real hope of redemption is Grand Theft Auto 6. Now, my opinion is that the generation has already failed, right? Grand Theft Auto 6 is one release, and we're past the point where people will get fired up and buy a console for like one game, right? The question for me is like whether or not like Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be a major a major pillar of the industry going forward, or whether it's going to collapse right here, right? Is this going to be it, or is this like entire thing going to collapse the console gaming space? Because it does kind of feel like at this stage that Grand Theft Auto is the only thing keeping PlayStation afloat, right? Final Fantasy has gone downhill. Metal Gear doesn't exist anymore. Like Call of Duty is stale and generic. Like for normies, like they don't really care about wokeness in games, about the issues with game dev, with minor niche releases, right? As long as they get their precious GTA. Like if you think about it, Grand Theft Auto 5 came out before like woke stuff became like very controversial. Now, Grand Theft Auto has always been woke. Like just look at like GTA 3, San Andreas, like Vice City Stories. Like it's always been woke. It's been like a major part of the series identity. But the question is Grand Theft Auto 6 going to be so woke that the audience is put off by it and decides not to invest in the game? Like, I honestly don't think it's possible at this stage, right? What I expect to happen is that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to come out, and it's going to be the same thing that always happens with these games, is that the game comes out, people like uh, run around the open world, they kill cops, they kill civilians, right? They don't touch the story mode, right? And if they do, it's just to like unlock everything in like the main game, right? They skip all the cutscenes, they ignore it because it's not fun or interesting, right? Grand Theft Auto has never had good mission structure. It's never been fun or memorable or interesting. Like it has always been a complete disaster, right? Grand Theft Auto is just not a very good video game, but people don't care because as long as they can go around and just like murder minorities, right? Like that's all they care about. That's all they want is like just going around like killing people. Like it has no technical depth, it has no like appeal. It's not like intellectually stimulating. It's just like childish chaos, right? Like in like a Clockwork Orange, where like Alex just like commits acts of like insane violence. Like he rapes people's wives, he rapes like underage girls, he goes out and then like uh gets himself arrested, and like the entire point of the book is that like eventually he grows up and gets bored with committing acts of senseless violence, right? Like I have to wonder if at some point that like the Grand Theft Auto audience is going to do the same thing, where like they look at like what they're doing in these games and realize that like these games are not all that interesting or fun. Right, like they are very immature, they are very underdeveloped, they are just not all that interesting. Again, that's kind of what I hope would happen. But what I think is going to happen instead, like I think, is we are going to see more people start to address like the problems with Grand Theft Auto 6. Right? I do think people are going to acknowledge that like with this one that the games are not as good as they used to be, that it's a major downgrade from 5, that like the company is just not doing what they used to do, or like the company was really not that good to begin with. Like I think more and more people are going to acknowledge that, but I think much like with Mortal Kombat 11 or Tekken 8 or like whatever, like recent examples, like I don't think that's necessarily going to impact sales at all, right? Grand Theft Auto is thought to be a franchise that's too big to fail, right? But that's not really a thing. People have like talked about this before. Like it'll be interesting. Like I think Grand Theft Auto 6, like when it comes out, is simply going to be like the game that kind of makes the knowledge of what Grand Theft Auto is trying to do like mainstream, right? I do think it is going to be very, very difficult to get Grand Theft Auto to lose its like brand name and recognition. It's going to take years of like bad quality releases to diminish like what Grand Theft Auto has built up over the years, in my opinion. However, there is like one thing that I think would like completely kill the game like immediately, right? What if Grand Theft Auto tries to get away with the 6-star mechanic, right? Like the wanted system, right? What if in Grand Theft Auto 6, if you like kill a civilian, right? If you go through the court system and then your character just ends up in prison for like forever, right? Like what if that happens? Like what if you get actual repercussions for committing acts of violence instead of just getting like the slap on the wrist like you're in California or something, right? Like what if the game actually tries and pushes a violence is bad message on you, right? Like, what if the game tries to stop you from doing what everyone does in Grand Theft Auto? Is just going on like mass killing sprees, right? What if the game starts like preventing you from having that kind of freedom, right? If that happens, if they try to do that, if they try to go against the series' entire identity, they are going to completely collapse overnight. Like the reality is that is the core essential of GTA is the wanton violence, right? If they try to move away from that, they're going to keep failing more and more and more. We kind of saw this with Grand Theft Auto 5 where you had like two out of the three protagonists like pretend to be normal people during cutscenes and then like in the actual game you're just going around like killing people indiscriminately, right? Right? It's like with CJ, right? In San Andreas, he's kind of the same way where they try to like make him a sympathetic character in cutscenes, but like what you're doing in the actual game like completely flies in the face of that. Like that mission where like you take those construction workers and just like pour concrete all over them. It's like, bro, that's a terrible way to die, right? But you just you have all these people just like kind of making excuses for it. Like, oh, it's just a video game. Like CJ isn't actually killing all these people, but like again that just but that is a real legit issue is like, narrative dissonance, right? Like why is CJ presented as a good person when he's doing all of these terrible things in the actual game? When he can do all these terrible things in the actual game. That's one of the reasons I love Yakuza so much because there's never a situation in which like Kiryu would ever hit a woman, right? He would never attack a civilian because there's no purpose for it, right? Like you have combat situations where you do fight other people who need to be fought or whatever, but like it's limited to like specific gameplay sections, right? Like it feels a lot more real than what Grand Theft Auto tries to do, right? Where like anybody can just whip out a gun any time, and it's just no, it's just it's pathetic. It doesn't work. It's a stain on like gaming history, and I eagerly await the day that like Grand Theft Auto does fall off because I do think we're in that period now where Grand Theft Auto isn't doing anything new and interesting, but like that's my thinking on it right now. Going into Grand Theft Auto 6's release is that like I don't think it's possible for 6 to bomb unless they specifically mess with like the wanted system. That's the only thing I think is going to work. Like, but I do think there's going to be like a general acceptance that this game is not as good as Grand Theft Auto 5. That it took too long to come out. That it's woke now. That like Rockstar has lost the plot. That was true with like Red Dead Redemption 2 to a certain extent, right? But like you're not really seeing a lot of people like acknowledge that. Even Razorfist won't admit it because he's such a Western shill. But like I think Rockstar is one of the most woke companies out there. The issue right now is that people are just so nostalgic for them and that they put out so few video games that like it's really difficult to start noticing like the progression. and like people are still making excuses for them, but there will come a time where that stops being a thing and people start addressing the very real problems at Rockstar Games.